All right, so welcome to another deep dive. We're ready to jump into some fascinating stuff today. Just like always, you know how this works. You send us things you're curious about, something you've read that's caught your attention, and we take a deep dive together. Today, we're heading over to Japan for a story that's really, well, it's compelling and also pretty tragic, honestly.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's the Shibuya Station Shooting Incident. And our listener, they really want to get a handle on this event, even if they don't know that much about Japan.
Makes sense.
So that's our mission today. We've got this super detailed Wikipedia article, and we're going to break it down together. We want to figure out what happened, who was involved, and why it's a story that, well, it really makes you think. We'll be looking at everything. Like, we'll cover the background of the person who did it, the events as they happened, what happened in the courts afterward, and some of the big questions this all brings up, about society and things like that.
Absolutely. This Wikipedia article is packed with information, and our goal is to put those pieces together so it makes sense, even if Japan is totally new to you.
Right.
And I think what's both fascinating and really unsettling is how this one man, kind of driven by desperation, set off this chain of events that ended up with violence in, like, really public places. We're talking Tokyo and Yokohama.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Now, the article actually talks about two separate shootings, but they're both linked to the same guy. His name is Kumagai Tokuhisa. The first shooting was in Yokohama. It happened on May 29th, 2004, and the victim was a Chinese restaurant owner. Then, not even a month later, on June 23rd, 2004, there's another shooting. This one was at Shibuya Station. If you're picturing it, it's a huge, busy train station in Tokyo, like tons of people all the time. And the thing that jumps out at you is that both of these shootings happened really soon after this Kumagai guy got out of prison.
Yeah, you're right. Kumagai Tokisa was released in, let me check my notes, mid-April 2004. And within a really short period, bam, bam, these shootings happen.
It's scary how fast it all went down.
One person died and another was seriously injured. But I think it's crucial to look at these shootings in a bigger context. The article also mentions that he tried to set fire to Tokyo Station, like arson, and he attempted to rob a security company too. And these things happened between the two shootings.
So this wasn't just like two isolated incidents, it sounds like.
Exactly. It seems like he was on this intense, like, downward spiral, doing more and more risky things. And my guess is there was something driving all of this, some goal he had in mind.
Okay, so let's talk about Kumagai Tokuhisa himself.
Mm.
I mean, his early life, based on what the article says, it sounds incredibly rough. I mean, he was orphaned as a kid, had to move around between different relatives. And then on top of that, he lived through the World War II air raids in Japan. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the instability and trauma he must have gone through with all that?
Oh, absolutely. Losing both parents so young and then having problems with the family who took him in, that's a huge amount of disruption for a kid. And then the air raids, too. I mean, those would have been absolutely terrifying. Sadly, that kind of tough start in life, it can set someone up for a lot of problems later on.
And it seems like that's what happened here, because the article talks about a whole history of criminal behavior, and it started when he was just a teenager. He was arrested multiple times for stealing stuff, and that led to him spending time in juvenile detention centers. It wasn't just like one bad decision. It sounds like this was a recurring thing for him while he was growing up.
And that's a super important detail to understand here. This wasn't some guy who had a clean record and then suddenly committed these awful violent crimes. I mean, the article is really clear. It shows this whole pattern of criminal behavior, starting with theft as a young guy and then getting worse. He ended up with multiple prison sentences as an adult. It was for theft, gambling offenses, all sorts of things. And I think that background, it really helps us understand the later crimes, the ones that were so much more violent.
Now, here's the part that I found a bit surprising, considering everything we just talked about. It seems like there was a period where things might have actually turned out differently for him. Like, after he got out of prison in the mid-1980s, he started this business selling Chinese dumplings.
Oh, interesting.
And the article says it actually did pretty well. I mean, he even had stalls in places like Harajuku and Shibuya. And if you don't know Tokyo, those are super trendy areas, really popular with young people, lots of fashion and stuff. He even got married and had a daughter. The article calls it a high point in his life.
Wow, it really makes you wonder what went wrong. It seems like he was on the right track for a while there.
I know, right? The fact that he could build a business and have a family, it suggests that he, wanted a stable life. But then the article describes how his business started going downhill. He got divorced, and then in 1996, he got arrested again for robbery. And this time, he got another 6 years in prison. That seems to be the point where things really went south for him.
Yeah, that must have been a turning point for him, a time when things took a dark turn.
Because it was during that last prison sentence
Hmm.
that he started cooking up this plan to rob Tokyo Station.
Oh, okay.
He was convinced that there was tons of money being kept in this place called the Kiosk Collection Office. Now, if you're not familiar with the Japan, kiosks are these little booths you see in train stations. They sell newspapers, snacks, that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. This collection office, it didn't even exist. It was all in his head.
Really?
And that, like, false belief seems to be the spark that started the whole chain of events that we're talking about.
That's so wild how a completely made-up idea, especially when someone's desperate, can take over their thinking like that.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah. And even after he got out for a bit in 2004, then got sent back for stealing a car, he was still fixated on this Tokyo Station robbery plan. He even started exercising in prison, like getting himself physically ready.
So when he finally got out for good in April 2004, he didn't waste any time.
Nope.
He immediately started getting things in place for this robbery.
Yeah.
He rented a car to practice driving, looked up travel times to Tokyo Station, even bought stuff he thought he would need. He was obsessed with this plan.
Totally consumed by it. And the article goes into a lot of detail about all the steps he took, how determined he was to pull off this robbery that was based on this, like, completely false idea. He even went to Tokyo Station beforehand to check it out one last time. And there's another thing that's pretty disturbing. He was ready to use his gun to kill himself if the robbery didn't work out.
Oh, wow.
That shows you how desperate and unstable he was.
So on May 6th, 2004, he goes to Tokyo Station to do the robbery. He's completely convinced about this kiosk collection office, and he's even brought gasoline with him, like to set himself on fire if he gets caught. But the whole thing blows up because he can't find this office, and it doesn't exist. Then things get really, really bad.
Yeah, this is where things take a really dark turn. He couldn't find what he was looking for, felt like he was trapped, and he ended up setting fire to a storage room in the underground part of Tokyo Station.
That's terrifying.
It is. Luckily, no one was hurt in the fire, but it caused a lot of chaos and panic. And I mean, this is a busy train station. This arson attempt, I think it really shows how his desperation was reaching a boiling point. He was willing to do anything, even something super dangerous and reckless like that.
And it didn't stop there. After that failed attempt, he still hadn't been caught, and he was even more desperate for money than before. So he tried to rob his old security company. This was on May 27th, 2004. He actually pulled a gun on a security guard.
Oh.
But again, no money. You could just feel how frustrated and desperate he was getting with every failed attempt.
It's like he was spiraling further and further out of control. Each failure seemed to push him towards even more extreme actions. And then, just 2 days later, on May 29th, 2004, he committed murder. He shot the Chinese restaurant owner in Yokohama.
And he did all that just for money.
That was still his motive. He thought he could get a big chunk of cash from the owner's house, but the way he did it, it was brutal. He ambushed the guy and shot him at close range when he fought back. And in the end, he only got away with like 435,000 yen.
That's not much, considering he took someone's life for it.
I know, it's just awful.
After the murder, he probably knew the police would be looking for him, so he moved to a cheaper part of Tokyo. And then he set his sights on Shibuya Station. Again, he was wrong about this, but he thought there was a bunch of cash in an office underground. And this is what leads to the shooting on June 23rd, 2004.
What's really sad about the Shibuya Station shooting is that the victim seems to have been chosen almost randomly. It was a Tokyo Metro employee just on his way to work at the station office. Kumagai went after the guy's bag because he thought it was full of money, but it only had the guy's personal stuff in it. Of course, the employee fought back, and Kumagai shot him in the stomach at point-blank range. The employee thankfully survived, but had really bad injuries, like permanent ones. Kumagai even admitted later that he didn't find any money in the bag, and that he regretted shooting the guy. He knew it was pointless violence.
This whole sequence of events is just heartbreaking, honestly. It all started with this one bad idea, and then the desperation just kept building and building. But the story doesn't end with the shooting, right?
Right. Kumagai eventually told some friends what he had done and decided to turn himself in. But he didn't just go to the police station. He called NHK, which is like Japan's main public broadcasting station. He wanted to announce that he was giving himself up.
I mean, why?
It's a pretty dramatic move. Maybe it was a way of showing that he knew what he did was wrong, or maybe there was something else going on. But he showed up at the Metropolitan Police Department headquarters, told them he had shot someone at Shibuya Station, and showed them his gun. And then they arrested him right there for having a gun illegally.
And then the police figured out he was involved in the other crimes too,
Right.
right?
It was the forensic evidence, specifically the ballistics tests on the gun, that linked everything together. Those tests proved that his gun was used in both the Shibuya Station shooting and the murder in Yokohama.
So they had him.
That they did. And because of all that, he was hit with a whole bunch of charges: violating firearm laws, attempted robbery resulting in injury, robbery murder, trespassing, attempted robbery, and attempted arson. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a long list of serious charges.
It is, and the forensic evidence was really important in building the case against him and showing how all these seemingly separate incidents were connected. Now, in the first trial, Kumagai admitted to everything, and the judge gave him a life sentence. But the prosecution appealed, and the high court actually changed the sentence to death.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
It is, and the court was very specific about why they changed the sentence. They pointed to the fact that he used a handgun, that he had this long criminal history, that the Shibuya Station employee was so badly hurt, and that his crimes were planned out in advance.
For someone who doesn't know much about Japan's legal system, is that common? Like, giving the death penalty in a case where there was only one murder victim, especially when the person didn't have any prior murder convictions.
It's not that common, no. It shows how seriously the court saw his actions and the impact they had. I think the high court felt that all the crimes together, the fact that he was clearly dangerous, and the horrible things he did to the victims, all of that justified the death penalty in this case. His lawyers appealed to the Supreme Court, but in 2011, they upheld the death sentence. Kumagai Tokuhisa was executed in September 2013.
Wow.
The article mentions that he tried to take his own life in prison after the death sentence was final. It makes you think about what was going through his mind at that point.
So let's take a step back. We've gone through a lot of heavy stuff here. For someone listening, maybe they're learning about Japan and they don't know much about the legal system or how things usually work there. What are some of the main points they should take away from this story? What does it tell us about Japan? Or like about what happens when people are driven by desperation and violence?
That's a really good question. Japan is known for being safe. Crime rates are low compared to a lot of other places. But this case, even though it's extreme, it reminds us that bad things, really violent things, can happen anywhere, even in societies that are generally peaceful. And I think it also shows how important it is to keep public spaces safe, especially in busy cities with places like train stations where so many people are coming and going.
Yeah.
This case got a lot of attention from the media, and the legal process that followed was very thorough. That shows how committed Japan is to making sure justice is served and that people are held accountable for their actions.
And they didn't shy away from giving him the death penalty, even though he hadn't been convicted of murder before.
Exactly. That emphasizes how seriously the Japanese legal system saw Kumagai's crimes. They considered the fact that a life was taken in Yokohama and that the employee at Shibuya Station was left with such severe injuries. They also looked at his history of crime and how he could have been a danger to others.
So to wrap things up, we've taken a deep dive into this tragic chain of events. It all started with Kumagai Tokuhisa, a man who was desperate and had these false beliefs that led him down a very dark path. His life was full of challenges from a young age, and he was in and out of trouble with the law for a long time. Sadly, it all culminated in these acts of violence that had a devastating impact on the victims and their families, and ultimately led to his own execution.
Yes, it's a sobering reminder that sometimes events that might seem isolated can teach us bigger lessons about human nature, about society's values, and about how justice systems work. The way this case unfolded, from the investigation to the prosecution and the final verdict, it gives us a look into how Japan responds to serious violent crime and the importance it places on public safety and holding people accountable.
This brings up something important for you to think about, dear listener. We've looked at Kumagai's life, the hard times he went through, his repeated run-ins with the law, and how things escalated to violence. What do you think? What are some of the things that can lead to these kinds of tragic situations? And could society have done anything to prevent them? It's a complex case that raises a lot of questions worth pondering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. If there's another topic you'd like us to explore, just send us the material and we'll be happy to delve into it with you.